In an effort to modernize the nation's archival systems, the Ministry of Cultural Preservation authorized a comprehensive upgrade to the Monte Palma historical database. Officials described the process as a seamless integration of tradition and technology. Within minutes, the system reported total success, followed immediately by total collapse. It was later determined that owing to a spectacularly unforeseen interaction between the modernization software and the ministry's refreshment schedule, several decades of Monte Palma's recorded history had been inadvertently replaced with a film of assistant archivist Maria del Sol Herrera's birthday celebration. While the recovery effort continues, the following fragments, recorded shortly before the modernization, have been cleared for public release.
Hello, and welcome back to Monte Palma. This is going to be a bit of an oddball episode. Most of this was recorded the week before the update, and so I don't really have a complete episode here, so we're just going to be focusing on some detailing. Very first thing we're going to be doing here is working on our fuel refinery. What I'm doing here is I wanted a custom smokestack, something really large that dominated the shoreline and a bit of the skyline for this particular port city. Here I am using Harbor Master J, put up a little collection of assets to custom make some lighthouses. This was several months ago before obviously the DLC that just came out. I'm going to use the pieces here to make my own smokestack. This episode is basically going to be detail heavy, just detailing out the things I built in the last episode. I'm not going to get too much infrastructure or anything like that. I wanted to try to add some of the DLC stuff. I waited too long, and obviously it's just a few days after it. I need more time with that to really figure it out, but we will get to it. Here, somebody uploaded a nice little mod set here of smokeless smokestacks, and now we can use them to build things with. So I'm going to use one here to make some piping. Depending on which decal set you're using, they will behave slightly differently from one another. Real Vision decals will behave differently from the Urban Decay and slightly different from Sully's Stain decals. Essentially, they have dimensions, in-game dimensions measured in meters, and they have an actual physical depth. So depending on which set you're using, some may have a depth of 1 meter, like the Real Vision decals. Others may only have a depth of like 10 centimeters, like the Urban Decay. So that determines what you can use them for. Like these ones here have a depth of, I think, a meter, so they will cover uneven surfaces. They will vary a little bit. Beside the fuel refinery here, I thought it may be a good place to put in a corporate headquarters for whatever company happens to be for the fuel refinery. I guess we determined that in the last episode. So I guess this corporation here is Senpal, or some government corporation. My main objective here of the fuel refinery is to make it look a little more grimy and grubby. It's a fuel refinery and it looks just way too clean. For the first bit here, I'm just going to spend a bunch of time making this place look a little less pristine. Over the last few episodes, I've been figuring out better ways to blend the decals together so they don't look, because they see here we have a bit of tiling, there's a bit of overlap, they don't necessarily, the edges of them may look a little weird and stuff. Hide some of the edges and stuff like that. The best way I found is to first lay down the big decals and then use stain decals to blend the edges together a little bit so they're not so obvious. Also, I want to change some of the colors of some of these tanks. I really want some rusty ones. Unfortunately, most of them don't recolor very well. They have a metallic shine to them, so even if you try to change the colors of rust colors, they still look shiny and that doesn't look right. These round ones here, these ones work fine. Yeah, it's just a matter of layering up the decals to blend things together. Things don't look so obvious. Obviously, if you get in really super close and take a real hard look at things, you'd probably see all sorts of mistakes, but this sort of thing is really meant to be looked at a bit of a distance. Urban decay decals here to make the rooftops look a little rusty, add a lot of stainage and streaking to the sides of these buildings. In the context of the city I'm making right here, this refinery would have been here since the late 50s. So yeah, obviously it's going to show a lot of signs of age. What I'm doing here with this, putting decals on top of decals, this is not necessarily a great thing to do. The problem is the decals tend to want to fight with each other, and sometimes you may see this, other times it might disappear. So it's not exactly a wasted effort, but sometimes it doesn't work out right, and it's probably better just not to do that at all. Finding some real vision decals here. I've never really thought about this, but they actually stick the tops of buildings just fine here, so I'm going to use some of them to dirty up the top of the tanks. So I didn't really have any story element for this episode, hence the alternative intro to this week's episode. Next week I will be back to the actual historical narration for the city. This one, because we're just a week before the DLC, really couldn't think of a proper story element here, so I thought I'd just do something a little fun instead for this one. That's our detailed fuel refinery. Okay, let's go on to our rebuilt, I guess it's essentially our downtown area. I started this last week. I wasn't particularly happy with how it was turning out. Some of the detailed spots look really good. The rest of it, not so much. It's missing some historic buildings. We don't have proper buildings for Latin American, Caribbean, Central American. So I was playing around with some assets. I found this one. It's from the European building set. It's a mixed residential. It's like a level 5. The architecture is almost right. The roof line on it, it's a bit crazy, but it's the closest thing I have. And once I recolor it, I think it looks all right. And once we add some detailing to it, I think it'll blend in pretty well. This one, a little less happy with. Just the architectural style will work, but once again, it's the roof on this one that's a little outrageous. It needed a couple of older buildings. Like I know this supposedly burnt down in a big fire in the 50s. Obviously, some buildings would have survived. Also, for this particular region, covered walkways are fairly common. This is a tropical rainforest climate, and they would have torrential downpours pretty much every afternoon, so covered walkways would be definitely a thing. Once again, we don't have a good way of doing it in game, so I'm making some, just trying out some things with some buildings here to give the look. They work at a bit of a distance. I don't know if they work perfectly well totally right close up. For my purposes, I think these sorts of things I'm doing down here, I think they work fairly well. I have noticed in the beachfront commercial buildings, there are several buildings in there that are a lot like, once we recolor them, work with the static props, not functional assets, I think I can create a lot of interesting looking buildings with those. So I'm looking forward to working with those. Won't see any of that in this episode, but yeah, over the next couple episodes, once I dig into it, I think I can come up with some pretty interesting things. Essentially, I wanted a little more density. It felt a little too sparse, so I just spent some time filling everything in, making it feel a little more built up than it was. These little ponds here, these come with the Netherlands DLC, and they're part of the cemetery, but they also, you can find them as props with Find It. And these are great. But for here, I'm not going to be using them as ponds. I'm just going to sink them a bit and use them as planters. Nice quick option if you don't want to have to spend a whole lot of time making one yourself. This works pretty well. We established in the last episode that this is a very impoverished area of the city. All the detailing I'm going to be doing down here is to enhance that aspect of the area. And essentially that's just adding a lot of wear and tear to everything. The buildings, the entire region, but this area specifically, they're not well maintained, and the climate here is very harsh on buildings. Lots of mold, streaking, crumbling wall textures, all that sort of stuff. So we have to add that all in to make it look appropriate for the region we're building. Also, things shouldn't be very well maintained. Everything should be in a bit of state of decay. So there's cracked pavement, weeds growing, graffiti, all the typical indicators of urban decay. Earlier I was saying don't stack the decals because they will fight with each other. If that's okay, if they are semi-transparent or transparent, they seem to behave together a little better, and that's what I'm doing on the roof here. Also on the sides of the walls as well, you can see I'm stacking Sully's stain decals on top of the urban decay decals here. Sometimes you just can't get the decals to, exactly where you want them, so I put them as close as possible and use Move It just to lower them into place. You have to be careful of this. If you move them any other direction, they'll just disappear, and then you'll have a terrible time trying to find them. One thing I've not used a lot of in my game so far are the wet surfaces decals. So I'm putting a couple on the roof here. I think they look pretty good. I have a lot of things loaded into my game that I haven't really used a lot, especially for surfaces and decals. And I really need to go through them and play around with a few things. Now, I don't do a lot of prop detailing. I find the reason I don't is at a bit of a distance, and you're usually looking at your city from overhead, so you're not really down at street level. So you usually typically see a lot of this sort of detailing. So I tend not to do a lot of it, but I thought for this particular street it might be fun to add a bit of garbage and stuff along the street side. I'm sure some people are thinking all the distressed surfaces I'm adding that I'm going a little over the top, but that's really not the case. Some areas in this part of the world, like Central America, the buildings really do look this worn down. It's a bit shocking for North American eyes, although there are some places in North America, you get into some of the southern states, some of the more impoverished areas of especially the Gulf region, you have areas that kind of look like this as well. I think my biggest issue is sometimes it might look a little repetitive, and that's just because I've gotten a little lazy. I'm just using one decal to cover the entire surface. So that's something I could be a bit more conscious of. But also, once again, you're going to be seeing a lot of these areas from a distance. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time at ground level looking at these things. Depending on what you're doing, you might be able to get away with it. It also depends on how you like to approach these things. Some people really get into being very specific about the detailing. I fall a bit in the middle somewhere on certain points of interest. I'll spend a lot of time detailing those, and in other areas in the town, depending on how I feel they fit in with the rest of it, they may get some light detailing, or they might not even get any detailing at all. There's some neighborhoods that I'm going to be filling out in the background here, some residential housing. I'm not going to add any detailing to them at all. My thinking here is if I'm ever recording like a flyover or fly through of the neighborhood, they're going to be in the background and they're going to be backdrop, and we're never ever really going to see them close up. Why waste your time detailing something that you're never ever going to look at? Now, obviously, for points of interest, those are like what we're focusing on for a particular episode. So yeah, those get full level of detailing. Some custom advertisements here. Still working on these. Some of these are from Owens Bay where I can use them, but a lot of them, I need a lot of Spanish language ones. So those are being added slowly. This building here, I think, works fairly well for like colonial, like Spanish colonial. Obviously it's not correct, but it has the breezeways out front here. It has that kind of look about it. As I said, the roof line, it's a bit much, but it's all I really have to work with for the moment. And I think once we add all this rotting, decaying surface to it, I think it looks pretty good. It plays the part fairly well. I was hoping to include some of the DLC in this episode. Part of the reasons why this is a bit of an oddball one is I had a few minor issues with the update. Nothing major. It just essentially it took longer for it to sort itself out in my system and some of the mods get updated, that sort of thing. I was wanting to add a few things. I do add some ferry surface at the very end here. My first impression was I need a bit more time to play with it. There's maybe a slight learning curve to it. Also, just figuring out how to actually make it look good, that also it's going to take a bit of time. So we'll be seeing more of that in the next episode. I was wanting to add a bit of fishing industry to this harbor area that I'm working on down here. Yeah, definitely I need more time with that to figure it out. This area I'm working on down here, this is where the fishing port is going to go. I just wanted to put some buildings down here to fill it in. I'm not going to get into too much detailing down here this episode. This is more setting things up for next episode. Also, I did play around with the fishing assets a little bit. I'm going to have to move things around here to get that to work properly in here. What I'm doing down here is I want a bit of history to this part of town. Most of it did burn down. Obviously, some buildings did survive. And that's what I'm building out here. Some sort of historic port building or dock building. And I'm probably going to rebuild this. Now that we have proper keys, I don't need to be doing like what I'm doing down here, the pedestrian pathway. I can do this a different way. So that's going to probably be updated for next episode. Right down by the fishing docks, I put all the educational buildings, so elementary and high school. I need them here for the functionality, obviously, but I don't want them necessarily to actually look like what they function as. So the detailing I'm doing here is to essentially just disguise them a little bit. The buildings I chose are fairly generic in their appearance. They don't necessarily look like schools. And if I do a little detailing around them, I think we can make them look more maybe office buildings for the industrial area of the town. These might be more buildings associated with Senpal. What I'm doing here is just deleting all the things that make them look nice, and I'm going to be integrating the surfaces, adding a few industrial prop buildings to them to expand them a bit. And yeah, it just gives them a very different look, and by the time I'm done here, they won't look like actual schools, even though they're functioning as such. So I'm having issues with supply chain shortages and stuff like that. So my solution is, rather than appease them by lowering the taxes, I'm going to lower their taxes, raise their taxes, and drive them out of business. It works. Until I get proper supply chains in, I don't really need industries that are complaining about not having proper access. Started working on this little beach area with this expensive property and house on the waterfront here. I'm not going to get too much into this. This is also something I'm going to be probably working on more in the next episode. I'm just adding it here. Right up by the highway, I thought this would be a perfect location to put in some low-rent housing. So we're going to use the ones from the Netherlands set. I really like these. They're very generic looking. And I'm just going to arrange some of the prop versions into essentially a housing development. And once we recolor them, I think they blend in just fine with everything else. these surface net lanes for roads, you can see how they have these hard edges. And so I'm just using some decals and some stains here to blend them together so it's not so obvious. I always put a bit of staining under the buildings, right around the edges. It just makes them stand out from the surface a little better. I just realized this episode I'm spending a lot of time detailing roads and parking lots. These buildings right out by the breakwater, even though this area obviously doesn't have a lot of like rich people or expensive properties or anything like that, I figured these ones would probably be a little nicer than what's around the surrounding area, but not too nice. because I added all that low rent housing across the street from the hospital here. We're going to create a little parking space for them all. Okay, we're gonna just add a ferry in here. I need more time with this though to get to look good. It's a slight learning curve to setting these things up. All I'm going to be doing here is making a functional one to get things rolling. I'm really counting on ferries to cut down on some of the traffic running across to the island over here. And the initial results seem to be promising. It looks like people are going to use it. I'm not sure yet what the actual total numbers are for passengers for this yet, so we'll have to wait and see for that. Eventually, this will run from downtown out to Port Leonis. And that's it for this episode. Next week, we'll be returning to more proper episode. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Right here is like the biggest casualty from the update. All this is broken. Anyway, I will see everybody in the next episode. Bye.